Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today we're excited to bring you the gripping continuation of a story that started with an unexpected mix-up in the grocery aisle. The most thrilling moment so far? Our billionaire hero on one knee in the narrow hallway of his love's apartment, proposing with nothing but heartfelt sincerity and a sparkling ring. If you're dying to know how they reach that point and what happens next, stick around and listen to the entire story. We promise it's full of twists, heartfelt confessions, and surprises you won't see coming. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to support our channel and get notified of more captivating tales. Let us know your thoughts in the comments and tell us where you enjoy listening the most. Aurea Dawson never imagined her day could spiral so quickly from routine errands to utter chaos, but it had all started with a misplaced grocery cart at Fair and Fine Market. She hadn't even wanted to leave her apartment that morning. Her sink was clogged, her car's check engine light kept blinking ominously, and she had a massive accounting project due for her job at a small publishing house. Still, life's demands pressed forward, and she forced herself out into the world, hair hastily thrown into a loose bun, eyes scanning her meager shopping list as she navigated the produce aisle. Bananas, spinach, a bag of apples, just enough to keep her going for the week without overspending. Truth be told, Arya's finances weren't great, and she was constantly measuring each grocery purchase against her monthly budget. Even something as small as an artisanal candle felt like a bold indulgence in these times, a tiny reprieve to kindle a slice of peace in her cramped apartment. She hadn't noticed the tall man in the tailored charcoal suit strolling through the aisles with an air of quiet authority. His presence should have been out of place amid the mundane shuffle of an everyday supermarket, but he seemed oddly at ease, selecting vegetables, meticulously checking labels, and scanning the shelves. Arya was too busy muttering under her breath about her finances as she compared the cost of two different brands of almond milk. If she had looked up, she might have caught a glimpse of him sooner. Logan Sinclair, a man whose entire life was spent in boardrooms negotiating multi-billion-dollar deals. Instead, she remained oblivious until the startling moment at checkout when she realized that half the items being scanned by the cashier were very much hers. "Excuse me," Arya said, stepping forward with her arms crossed over her chest. She noticed with dismay that the checker had almost finalized the purchase of her cherished lavender serenity candle. "I think you have my card." He turned, and the sharp intensity of his steel-gray eyes took her by surprise. Logan Sinclair was tall with broad shoulders, his crisp suit exuding wealth and confidence. His hair, dark and carefully styled, framed a face that looked like it belonged on the cover of a business magazine. He glanced down at the checkout belt, where, indeed, items like almond milk, fresh strawberries, and that expensive lavender candle were rolling along toward the cashier. He held up the candle. "I don't suppose I usually buy lavender-scented anything." Arya snatched the candle from him, trying to mask her embarrassment. She'd been so preoccupied with her own troubles that she hadn't noticed someone inadvertently pushing her cart. "Clearly not yours," she said, rubbing her temple. "And definitely not cheap. You almost drained my grocery budget for the month." The cashier, a bored-looking teenager with earphones dangling from one ear, raised an eyebrow. "So you want me to cancel the transaction?" "Yes," Arya and Logan said in near-perfect unison, though Arya's voice carried clear annoyance, while Logan's had a surprising note of amusement. He shot her a quick grin, one corner of his mouth quirking up. "I'm sorry, I'm Logan Sinclair, apparently a novice at grocery shopping." She tried not to be swayed by his charm. He might look like a runway model, but this fiasco had cost her time she didn't have to spare. Still, there was something disarming about him, especially as he extended his hand in a polite greeting. "Arya Dawson," she said, shaking his hand briefly. His grip was warm, grounding her in a moment that felt surreal. He turned back to the cashier, helping void the items before gesturing for Arya to replace her groceries on the belt. "Allow me to pay for at least part of this, as an apology," he offered. She shook her head. "It's fine," she insisted. "Just don't let it happen again." He laughed softly, leaning against the counter while he waited for his own items to be rung up. "Not to be melodramatic," he added, "but I'm guessing fate may have set this up. You know, to bring our paths together." Arya rolled her eyes. The notion was silly and romantic at once. "Fate, or your lack of attention to grocery carts?" "Could be both," Logan said without missing a beat. "But seeing as I almost stole that lavender candle, it's only fair I make it up to you." Let me buy you coffee. She considered walking away, but despite everything, something about him, the easy confidence, the faint self-deprecating humor, made her curious. All right, she said, crossing her arms. But this better not be some sales pitch for fancy vacuum cleaners or something. I promise, he replied. I have absolutely nothing to sell you. They ended up at a cozy coffee shop around the corner, a local spot called Beans and Brews that Aria often frequented when she needed a quick caffeine boost or a quiet moment away from her hectic routine. As they settled at a small wooden table, the noise of milk frothers and subdued chatter providing the ambient soundtrack, Aria sized up her unexpected companion. She still couldn't believe she was here, sipping a vanilla latte with a man she'd just met in one of the strangest ways possible. So, she asked, resting her chin in her hand, how does a well-dressed man like you mess up and steal someone else's groceries? Logan's eyes glinted. Believe it or not, I don't always do my grocery shopping personally. I'm a bit rusty. She snorted, nearly choking on her latte. Rusty at grocery shopping? That's a new one. Let me guess. You're a corporate hotshot or something? You have an assistant who usually handles these things? He didn't deny it, merely offered a half smile that made Aria's stomach flip in a way she refused to analyze too deeply. I run Sinclair Enterprises, he said after a moment, letting the name hang in the air. For a moment, Aria was speechless. Sinclair Enterprises was a household name, though she mostly heard it on financial news channels or saw it in business headlines. The company was rumored to own dozens of properties across major cities, dabbling in tech, real estate, and even philanthropic ventures. You mean that Sinclair Enterprises? She managed to say, her voice tinged with disbelief. He sipped his espresso with easy calm. That's the one. And yes, normally I do have assistants who handle errands, but once in a while I prefer to do things myself. Apparently I'm still learning the basics. Her mind reeled. Was she really sitting in a cafe with a billionaire who, mere minutes ago, was about to walk off with her lavender candle and organic strawberries? This was insane, yet a small part of her was intrigued. Maybe it was his unexpectedly down-to-earth manner, or the fact that he'd apologized for the confusion and had a sense of humor about it. She couldn't quite peg him as just another arrogant mogul. So, tell me something else about you, she ventured, trying to steer the conversation away from his immense wealth. Talking to a billionaire felt surreal, and she didn't want to linger on his status any more than necessary. He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms thoughtfully. All right, I value authenticity, he said quietly. There's a lot of showmanship in my world, and I get tired of people pretending. But I've spent all of 5 minutes with you, and you've been direct. I like that. Aria flushed, glancing down at the latte in her hands. She wasn't used to compliments from men like him, or men in general, especially not after the roller coaster of her last relationship, which had ended in heartbreak and resentment. Thanks, I guess. Most of the time, being direct just gets me labeled as too blunt. Logan shrugged, a faint smirk ghosting his lips. I'm used to people tiptoeing around me, worried about my title or influence. You acted like my messing up was an inconvenience, which it was. I appreciated that honesty. She found herself relaxing, the tension from earlier dissipating under the lull of easy conversation. They discussed everything from favorite books to the Netflix shows they secretly binged, and Aria discovered Logan had a surprisingly normal side. He liked old detective novels, had a penchant for strong espresso, and was an only child who sometimes missed the rowdy family dinners he never had. By the time they'd finished their drinks, her annoyance at the grocery mix-up had faded into a warm buzz of curiosity. As they stepped outside into the early evening air, Logan hesitated for a moment. I'd like to see you again, he said, his tone sincere. But no pressure. Aria fiddled with her phone, uncertainty tensing her shoulders. I mean, this was unexpected, she admitted. You're not exactly the type of person I cross paths with. He flashed that confident smile again. Trust me, I don't usually cross paths with people who call me out so easily. That's part of the appeal. She laughed softly, feeling a spark of possibility flit through her. All right, Sinclair, she teased. One more chance, but don't steal any more of my groceries. His eyes lit up. Deal. Days passed, and Arya convinced herself that their chance encounter had been nothing more than a whimsical detour in the grand scheme of her life. She had bills to pay, errands to run, and a stack of editing invoices that were piling up on her desk. The notion of seeing Logan Sinclair again was like recalling a dream, vaguely pleasant but easily overshadowed by daily responsibilities. Then a sleek envelope arrived at her apartment building, dropping through the mail slot with an almost theatrical thud. Her name, Aria Dawson, stood out in elegant gold script against navy blue stationery that felt expensive just to the touch. Inside, she discovered an invitation to dinner. The details were minimal and polished. Join me at the Azure Lounge, 8 p.m. LS. Nothing else. Not even a phone number. But the crisp quality of the paper and the hush of possibility tugged at her. She'd heard of the Azure Lounge, a high-end restaurant perched at the top of a five-star hotel overlooking the city. To get a reservation typically required connections or months of planning. That alone sent a thrill of nerves through her. Despite her hesitations, Arya found herself stepping out of a cab at 7:55 p.m. that very night. She'd spent far too long rummaging through her wardrobe, finally settling on a simple black cocktail dress that accentuated her figure without making her feel overdressed. The doorman at the hotel nodded politely as she breezed through the lobby, her heart pounding louder than her heels on the polished marble floor. She was directed to a private table by massive glass windows that framed the glittering city skyline. Logan stood the moment he saw her, his posture relaxing in a palpable wave of relief. He looked effortlessly elegant in a tailored navy suit, a slight smirk brushing his lips as she approached. I was starting to worry, he confessed softly, pulling out her chair. Arya sat, trying to calm the flutter in her chest. Worry about what? That I'd stand you up? He shrugged with casual self-assurance. It's been known to happen. I'm glad you're here. I affirm. Before she could respond, a waiter appeared with menus bound in deep blue leather. No prices were listed, a small detail that made Arya wince internally. She stole a glance at Logan, who showed no surprise at all. May I? He asked, and at her nod, he ordered for both of them with the confidence of someone who'd done this 100 times before. When the waiter glided away, Logan turned his attention fully on her. How has your week been? He asked. Arya laughed, the sound coming out wry. Chaotic. My boss expects me to reconcile the new invoices by Friday, which is actually impossible, and my car's threatening to die any day now. His forehead creased with genuine concern. I could lend you my driver. She held up a hand. No, thank you, but no. I'm not used to that level of help. Logan inclined his head in acceptance. Understood. Offer stands, though. Their first course arrived, some sort of delicate seafood dish bathed in saffron butter, and Arya found herself momentarily speechless by how exquisite it tasted. The entire experience felt lavish, like she'd slipped into a realm where people didn't worry about making rent or paying off student loans. For a second, she questioned if she belonged here, or if she was merely a stray breeze drifting through Logan's meticulously curated world. He seemed to sense her internal struggle, his gaze warm and steady. You know, he began, I never thought I'd invite a stranger to dinner after a random grocery encounter. But something about you made me want to take the risk. She stared into his eyes, heart quickening. Risk? Logan's smile turned thoughtful. In my world, there's a script. I meet people through certain circles. We talk business or philanthropy or real estate, and everything is a calculated move. It's rare to stumble onto someone, genuine. Arya inhaled, the sincerity in his eyes pulling her in like gravity. I'm not used to this kind of attention, she admitted, her voice quieter than before. It's overwhelming, but you're interesting. His grin returned, lighting up his entire face. I'll take interesting. It's a good start. Over the next few weeks, their paths crossed more and more frequently. What began with an accidental grocery cart misadventure blossomed into spontaneous dinners, late-night coffee runs, and even a visit to a secluded art exhibit Logan had rented out after hours. Arya found herself surprised at how easily she was slipping into Logan's orbit. She'd always prided herself on her independence, on avoiding anything that resembled a dependency on a partner. But there was a genuine magnetism in how Logan approached her, as though he found her every quirk compelling. Every conversation between Arya and Logan felt like a natural extension of their personalities. They didn't force topics. Each question arose from real curiosity, and every answer revealed another layer. Arya's initial wariness gradually lessened under Logan's consistent efforts to show her that wealth wasn't all he had to offer. The sincerity with which he paid attention to her stories, about her cat sleeping on her laptop while she tried to work, or the frustrations of juggling multiple credit cards, was disarming. Meanwhile, Arya, with her no-nonsense approach to life, provided Logan a sense of normalcy he'd never quite had in his rarefied circles. Yet, despite their growing closeness, Arya couldn't ignore the disparities that loomed between them. Logan lived in a modern penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a fortress of glass and steel that screamed power and money. She, on the other hand, resided in a modest apartment whose ceiling had water stains from a long-defunct leak. And while Logan claimed he appreciated her straightforwardness, part of her couldn't help but wonder if the differences in their lifestyles would one day snap this fragile thread, binding them together. That question nagged at her when she arrived at his penthouse one evening for a simple dinner. He greeted her warmly at the door, taking her coat and offering a glass of wine before they even reached the living room. The space was impeccable. Marble floors, sleek furniture, tasteful art that she suspected might be original pieces. A soft jazz track played in the background, and the aroma of something cooking drifted from the open-concept kitchen. "I decided to try making pasta," Logan announced proudly, leading her into the kitchen area where fresh ingredients were spread out. "I've got a recipe here somewhere." She couldn't help but laugh. "You, personally, cooking pasta?" He feigned indignation, crossing his arms. "Am I that unconvincing as a home chef?" "Well," she teased, "you did once confuse my cart for your own. Forgive me if I question your culinary competency." Hanapur, he raised a brow, but amusement crinkled at the corners of his eyes. "I'll have you know, I've been practicing." Arya sipped the wine and sat at the kitchen island, watching him chop vegetables with painstaking care. She found it unexpectedly endearing that he was willing to step out of his comfort zone. For a moment, the illusions of class and wealth barriers melted away. He was just a guy trying to make dinner for someone he cared about. As they chatted over simmering sauces and the clink of wooden spoons on stainless steel pots, Arya's phone buzzed. She checked it, frowning as her best friend Nina's name lit up on the screen. Nina rarely called unless it was important, so Arya excused herself to answer. The call was brief, but the tension in Nina's voice was unmistakable. Rumors were swirling online about Logan's new mystery date, complete with speculation about Arya's background. A hint of dread coiled in Arya's stomach. Returning to the kitchen, she tried to shake off the discomfort. Logan noticed her unease immediately. "Everything all right?" he asked, pausing in his chopping. "Yeah, just social media drama," she admitted, not wanting to damper the evening. She offered a casual smile that felt a bit forced. "Nothing major." Though he didn't press further, concern lingered in Logan's eyes. Still, dinner turned out delicious, the two of them sharing laughter and conversation that felt intimate in a way Arya hadn't anticipated. A few nights later, Arya found herself invited to an upscale charity gala hosted by Sinclair Enterprises, the kind of event that featured A-list celebrities, CEOs, and socialites with last names known across the country. She only learned about it indirectly, through a phone call from Logan's executive assistant, who reached out to confirm Arya's wardrobe measurements for a custom gown fitting. Arya was caught off guard, her voice fumbling through the conversation. When she confronted Logan about it, his expression turned remorseful. "I was going to tell you," he said, leaning against a countertop in his sleek home office. The city lights provided a dazzling backdrop as he spoke, but his face was etched with a seriousness that tugged at Arya's heart. "I just wasn't sure you'd want to come." "And why wouldn't I?" she demanded, trying to keep her cool. He sighed, crossing his arms. "Because these events, they can be intense. People will talk. They'll pry into your life. I wanted to protect you from that." Arya felt her frustration simmering, not because he was trying to shield her from the public eye, but because he decided for her. "I don't need protection from them," she insisted, voice firm. "You can't just keep me in the dark about major things that involve us both." Logan's resolve cracked slightly, and she saw genuine regret in his gaze. "You're right, I'm sorry. I'm used to dealing with problems before they can hurt the people I care about. But this wasn't the right approach. She took a steadying breath, letting the anger recede. I just want to be included in decisions that affect me. His posture relaxed marginally. Then you'll come to the gala? Arya hesitated, searching his face. She saw both hope and trepidation there, and something else, an unspoken worry that the world he inhabited might scare her away. Yes, she said finally, I will. The night of the gala arrived like a wave of glitter and tension all at once. Arya stood in front of a floor-length mirror in a hotel suite arranged by Logan's staff, adjusting the straps of her gown, a sapphire blue creation that clung to her curves in a tasteful yet eye-catching manner. The custom fit made her feel like a princess, though she tried to steady her nerves by recalling that she was, in fact, just a regular person who occasionally ate ramen for dinner. When she emerged into the lobby, Logan was waiting in a tuxedo that turned his usual aura of poised confidence into something downright cinematic. The moment he saw her, a genuine warmth lit his eyes and he reached for her hand. You look incredible, he murmured, pressing a light kiss to her cheek. They stepped out onto the red-carpeted entrance, bright camera flashes erupting around them. Arya's stomach clenched at the sudden onslaught of attention. She clung to Logan's arm, letting his steady presence guide her through the barrage of photographers and curious onlookers. He whispered reassurances in her ear, small words she could barely hear above the clamor of camera shutters. Inside, the ballroom was a vision of crystalline chandeliers, lavish floral arrangements, and impeccably dressed guests. Jazz music played in the background, lending the affair a refined, almost nostalgic ambiance. Conversations buzzed like a gentle hum, but as Arya and Logan made their way through, she felt the curious stares trailing them. Some people offered polite greetings, while others eyed her with thinly veiled speculation. She overheard one elegantly coiffed woman murmur to her companion, "She's not one of the usual socialites, is she?" Heat rushed to Arya's cheeks, but she stiffened her spine, reminding herself that she deserved to be here, if Logan invited her. Eventually, they reached a cluster of business executives, one of whom stepped forward with an ingratiating smile. Cameron Blackwood, one of Sinclair Enterprises' most significant investors, if Arya recalled correctly. "Logan," Cameron said, his tone silky with practiced diplomacy. "Glad you could make it. And this must be... Arya." Logan's voice was polite but firm. "Yes, Cameron, meet Arya Dawson." Cameron's gaze raked over her with an appraising glint. "Very pleased to meet you." His smile was tight, almost predatory. Logan is not usually so open about his personal affairs. Arya bristled, but she forced a cordial nod. "I'm honored to be here." They managed to extricate themselves from Cameron's circle, and Logan steered Arya toward a quieter corner near the grand piano. The initial glow of excitement had waned, leaving her a bit drained and self-conscious. The scrutiny was heavier than she expected, and while Logan stayed protectively close, there was no denying the curiosity swirling around them like intangible static. Within the hush of that corner, Arya voiced her concerns, leaning closer so no eavesdropping party could overhear. "I feel like I'm under a microscope," she admitted, eyes scanning the crowd. "They're all waiting for me to trip up or reveal myself as someone who doesn't belong." Logan took her hands gently, his thumbs brushing over her knuckles. "Let them think what they want," he said softly. "They do this to everyone. Trust me." She exhaled, willing her shoulders to relax. "I knew it wouldn't be easy, but this is next level." He dipped his head in acknowledgement. "I'm sorry it's turning out this way. I wanted you here because you matter to me, not to make you feel like some spectacle." Before Arya could respond, the band began playing a classic waltz. Logan, ever the consummate host, seized the moment and pulled her onto the dance floor. Despite Arya's uncertainty, he guided her skillfully, each step reinforcing a silent message of solidarity. In that swirl of music and graceful movement, the tension of the evening ebbed. She focused on Logan's warmth, the subtle press of his hand against her waist. Then a camera flash went off, capturing them mid-dance. Arya winced at the bright light, but Logan merely tightened his hold, as though to shield her from the intrusion. A fleeting thought passed through her mind. Was this worth it? Being part of Logan's life meant stepping into a world of ceaseless scrutiny and hidden agendas. But seeing the protective set of his jaw, the sincerity in his eyes, she felt a wave of resolve wash over her. She wanted to stand by him, not run away at the first sign of trouble. Once the music ended, Logan led her to a quieter hallway, away from the majority of guests. She could still hear the strains of the band in the distance, the low murmur of 100 conversations. He pressed a glass of champagne into her hand, his expression apologetic. "We can leave any time you want," he offered. Arya shook her head, her voice steadier than she felt. "No, I'm not letting them chase me away from your side. I might be out of my comfort zone, but I'm tougher than I look." The corner of his mouth twitched into a half smile, genuine relief in his gaze. "I know you are." By the time the gala wound down, Arya was exhausted. She'd endured countless introductions, side-eyed glances, and thinly veiled questions about her background. But she'd also felt a sense of pride in staying by Logan's side, standing her ground, and supporting him through what was clearly a critical social event for his company. As they left, the press still lingering outside bombarded them with more flashes. Arya noticed how skillfully Logan placed himself to shield her from the brunt of it, gently guiding her into the waiting car. "I'm sorry about all that," he murmured once they were safely inside, the driver pulling away. "You must be drained." Arya exhaled, letting her head rest against the seat. "I am, but I'm more concerned about you. How do you deal with this all the time?" He gave a half laugh, half sigh. "I'm used to it, which is probably the worst part. And I hate that you have to deal with it just because you're with me." She reached for his hand, lacing their fingers together. "Stop apologizing. I make my own choices." Arya woke up the next morning to a barrage of messages. Nina texted with urgent exclamation points, and several unknown numbers pinged her phone. She realized with a jolt of dread that her photos from the gala had flooded social media gossip sites. The posts ranged from mild curiosity, "Who is Logan Sinclair's new companion?" to outright nastiness. Corporate gold digger or real deal romance? Arya felt her stomach tighten as she scrolled through a few articles. They dissected everything from her expression on the red carpet to the rumored cost of her gown. Shortly after, the phone rang, and Arya saw Logan's name on the screen. She picked up hesitantly. "Hey," she managed, trying to keep her voice calm. "You've seen the coverage?" he asked, the tension in his voice clear. Arya rubbed her temple, wandering over to the single window in her small bedroom. "Yeah, it's intense." "Look," Logan said, exhaling audibly. "I hate that you're dealing with this. I can make some calls to get articles taken down or—" "Don't," she interrupted gently. "What good would that do? They just write more. Besides, I've already decided that if I'm in this with you, I'm in it. I'm not going to hide." There was a moment of silence before Logan responded. "I appreciate that, but I also need to tell you something. A complication that might make all of this worse." Arya's heart thumped. "What kind of complication?" Logan arranged to pick her up and bring her to his penthouse so they could discuss it in person. As she stepped into the spacious living room, she noticed the stern set of his jaw. He wasted no time, pulling a manila folder from a desk drawer. Inside were documents with legal language thick enough to make Arya's head spin. "There was an arrangement made years ago," he explained. "My father brokered a deal with another family, a kind of merger meant to secure a partnership between Sinclair Enterprises and their holdings. It involved me marrying their daughter. It was never formalized beyond these documents, but my board and my father's old associates won't let it die." Arya took a step back, her gaze darting from the folder to Logan's troubled eyes. "They want you to go through with a marriage for business reasons?" she asked, disbelief and anger lacing her words. Logan clenched his fists, his shoulders rigid. "They see it as a guaranteed alliance, a way to solidify control of certain assets. It's archaic, but in their minds it's a power move. And ever since I started showing up with you, they've been reminding me of this arrangement, implying that my personal life is interfering with the deal." Arya let out a shaky breath. "So what are you going to do?" He looked at her like the answer was obvious. "I'm going to fight it. I'm going to nullify the contract, and if the board refuses, I'll step down. I'm not playing by these twisted rules." She couldn't help the way her heart soared at his loyalty, but fear gnawed at her. "Logan, this is your life's work, your family's legacy. They can't just take it from you." "They can try," he said grimly, "but none of it matters if they're forcing me into a marriage I want no part of. I'm not a pawn." Arya stared at the documents, a swirl of panic and protectiveness inside her. Everything had happened so fast. Grocery store to exclusive dinners to a swirling romance that felt more real than anything she'd known. Now it seemed she might be entangled in corporate power games she never asked to be part of. "I don't want you to lose your company because of me," she whispered, eyes stinging. Logan stepped forward, gently cupping her face. "You're not the reason. I do this even if we'd never met. But with you here, I'm more certain than ever that I won't let them dictate my future." The battle with the board was anything but easy. Over the ensuing weeks, Logan attended back-to-back meetings, where men and women in tailored suits tried to strong-arm him into honoring the old arrangement. They dangled threats of shareholder rebellions, media scandals, and the unraveling of carefully structured partnerships. Each day, Logan came home more exhausted, though a determined light still burned in his eyes. Arya offered whatever support she could, listening when he needed to vent, giving him space when he needed to strategize. All the while, the tabloids and gossip sites feasted on the controversy, painting Arya as the woman who derailed a historic merger through a grocery cart romance. Yet through every storm of speculation, Arya and Logan grew closer. They took solace in small, private moments. Quiet breakfasts with scrambled eggs and coffee in her cramped kitchen, stolen kisses at his penthouse window overlooking the city at midnight, or shared laughter over takeout boxes when they were too stressed to cook. The intangible pressure from the outside world seemed to strengthen their bond rather than fracture it. Eventually, Logan's legal team discovered a clause that invalidated the contract without requiring a public scandal. It turned out the agreement hinged on specific timelines and conditions that had expired years ago. With that leverage in hand, Logan confronted the board one final time. It was a tense showdown, but in the end, the old arrangement was declared void. Several board members resigned in silent fury. Others begrudgingly accepted defeat. When Logan stepped out of that conference room, he felt more liberated than he had in his entire life. He didn't waste a moment. He rode the elevator straight to the parking garage, slid into his car, and drove across town to Arya's apartment building. Rain was drizzling by the time he arrived, misting the evening air in a haze. He found her door and knocked twice, pulse hammering. When she opened it, barefoot and dressed in a simple t-shirt and sweatpants, he wasted no time with pleasantries. "It's done," he told her in a breath, stepping inside when she waved him forward. "The contract is finished. We're free." A wave of relief washed over Arya, and without hesitation, she threw her arms around him. He buried his face in her hair, holding her tight as if he never wanted to let go. For a long moment, neither spoke, content to let their hearts thud together in a quiet symphony of gratitude and victory. Finally, Logan drew back, reaching into the pocket of his coat. Arya's eyes widened as he revealed a small velvet box. Her pulse galloped at the sight of it, a mixture of anticipation and disbelief bubbling in her stomach. He dropped to one knee in the narrow hallway of her modest apartment. "I don't want a contract or a business arrangement," he said, voice thick with emotion. "I want you, Arya Dawson. Just you." With trembling fingers, he flipped open the box, revealing a ring whose simplicity belied its exquisite beauty. "Will you marry me?" Tears prickled at the corners of her eyes, and for a moment she stood motionless, heart pounding like thunder. Then a slow smile curved her lips, and she nodded through the tears she could no longer hold back. "Yes," she whispered. "Of course I will." Logan slid the ring onto her finger, rising to envelop her in a kiss that felt like a promise. They stood in the warm glow of the hallway light, listening to the soft patter of rain against the windows, cocooned in a sense of rightness neither had imagined possible. Everything in their journey, every challenge, every prying gaze, every seemingly insurmountable obstacle, had led to this shared moment of love and assurance. In that tender instant, it no longer mattered that Logan was a billionaire, that Arya had once feared she didn't belong in his world, or that powerful people had tried to keep them apart. All that mattered was the electric bond they forged in the most unassuming place, a grocery store, and how it had sparked a love strong enough to weather corporate politics, media scrutiny, and personal doubts. Their story, set in motion by a simple mistake, stood as proof that sometimes fate, or a bit of chaotic fortune, knows exactly what it's doing, guiding people into each other's lives at just the right moment to form a connection that neither power nor wealth could replicate. Their future stretched before them in that hallway, a wide-open horizon of possibilities. And just as Logan had made clear from the very beginning, he would never regret almost walking off with Arya's lavender serenity candle, because it led him to her, and that was worth more than all the deals in the world. Meanwhile, the media speculated wildly about every detail. Would Logan's corporate rivals crash the ceremony? How much would the billionaire bride dress cost? But in truth, Arya and Logan found joy in simpler moments, sampling cakes at a modest bakery in her old neighborhood, giggling as they practiced their first dance in his penthouse living room, and nearly toppling over the coffee table in the process. Whenever stress threatened to overwhelm them, they remembered how fate had thrown them together over a misplaced shopping cart and a lavender candle. Simple beginnings for a grand adventure. In a world where boardroom deals and paparazzi lenses constantly loomed, they clung to the quiet certainty of each other's presence. No contract could dictate love. No camera flash could capture the depth of two hearts uniting. And that, they decided, was the only story that truly mattered. He never imagined a simple slip at the dry cleaners could unravel his meticulously ordered life. Yet there Henry Stone stood, freshly escaped from a hectic board meeting, cradling a garment bag he had assumed was his. He was still replaying the day's power negotiations in his head when he noticed something odd. The bag felt lighter than usual, and the outline beneath the plastic didn't look anything like his usual suits. A quick check confirmed his suspicion. A shimmering emerald gown hung inside. The dry cleaning clerk must have handed him someone else's clothes, but Henry had been too lost in thought to notice. His initial frustration was eclipsed by curiosity. The dress was clearly high-end, made of silk that caught the light with every movement. What truly pulled him out of his business-obsessed haze, however, was a phone call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end belonged to a woman who spoke with quiet intensity. She introduced herself as Camilla Hart and insisted they swap back their belongings immediately. She said she had an important event that night and needed her gown. Something in her tone, a mix of urgency and pride, caught Henry's attention. Normally, he might have sent an assistant to handle such a trivial matter. But the phone call ended with Camilla naming a small cafe near the center of the city, telling him to meet her there within the hour. Despite his packed calendar, Henry found himself heading straight to that cafe. The place stood on a charming street lined with artisanal shops and late-blooming flower boxes. Inside, beneath the warm glow of vintage lamps, he spotted a woman at a corner table. Her posture was straight, arms crossed, gaze scanning every newcomer with the impatience of someone who rarely had time to spare. When Henry stepped forward, garment bag in hand, her eyes narrowed. She was stunning in a quietly commanding way. Glossy dark hair, sharp hazel eyes, and an air of calm determination that suggested she was used to handling her own problems. "I think we have each other's clothes," Henry offered, placing the emerald gown on the table. Camilla slid his garment bag back without any ceremony. Her expression carried all the annoyance one would expect from a person whose evening plans had almost been derailed. That one short moment, however, marked the first spark in a series of changes neither of them saw coming. Outside the cafe, the city bustled with post-work traffic as Henry and Camilla stood there, awkwardly balancing a conversation that neither seemed particularly eager to continue. Henry's mind kept drifting to the urgent responsibilities awaiting him, phone calls he should make, emails he needed to send. But something about Camilla's unwavering stare made him pause. She was dressed in a tailored blazer and jeans, looking both practical and elegant, like someone who valued efficiency above all else. In contrast, Henry wore a custom-fitted navy suit that might have screamed, "overworked tycoon," to anyone paying enough attention. He cleared his throat, trying to break the tension. "So, this big event, is it a gala?" He picked up on her earlier comment about an important evening. Camilla nodded, her gaze flickering momentarily with what looked like pride. "It's a benefit for the New Horizon Foundation. We raise money to fund community programs, education, housing assistance, job training. It's not glamorous, but it's important to a lot of people." Henry recognized the name. His holding company had donated to that organization more than once, probably because one of his philanthropic advisors had deemed it worthwhile. He'd never bothered to see its operations firsthand. Still, he couldn't ignore the pinch of guilt at how oblivious he was to the cause. "I've heard of it," he ventured. "They do good work." Camilla's smile was thin, almost guarded. "Yes, we do. A check can help, but so does actual involvement. Many donors prefer to stay behind the scenes, though. Her words were pointed. She knew exactly who Henry was and how he typically operated. It wasn't unusual for wealthy benefactors to keep distance from the causes they supported, but somehow her directness made Henry want to explain himself. "Look," he began, "I'm sorry for the mix-up. If there's anything else I can do—" But Camilla was already tucking the gown under her arm. "Just be sure you have your own suit next time." She exhaled softly, then added almost as an afterthought, "Thanks, though, for meeting me. I was in a pinch." There was an unmistakable finality in her tone, but Henry found himself lingering. Something about Camilla, maybe that glint of determination in her eyes, stirred a rare curiosity within him. Yet before he could say anything more, she turned and walked off with purposeful strides, leaving Henry standing on the sidewalk, wondering why a single mistake had rattled his carefully orchestrated life so deeply. That very evening, Henry found himself pacing in his penthouse apartment, the city's skyline glittering through floor-to-ceiling windows. Work deadlines loomed, deals needed his signature, and usually he thrived in that environment. But his thoughts kept circling back to the emerald gown and the woman who wore impatience like armor. He replayed their conversation, how she'd dismissed his polite offers, and the subtle challenge in her voice when she mentioned actual involvement. If someone had asked Henry yesterday whether he'd attend another charity gala this month, he would have scoffed. He usually sent a representative to collect any gratitude or handshake from event organizers. But a restless energy took hold of him now. He found himself logging onto the New Horizon Foundation's website, scanning for details. He discovered that its main fundraiser, a formal dinner and silent auction, was scheduled for that very night. A quick glance at his watch told him the event was already underway. Impulsive decisions were not Henry's style. He preferred to analyze every angle, map out every outcome. Yet half an hour later, he was stepping out of a black town car and walking into a grand hotel ballroom with the confidence of someone who had pre-planned it for weeks. The chandelier-laden ceiling sparkled, and the hum of polite conversation washed over him. Gala attendees in gowns and tuxedos milled about, discussing charitable initiatives between sips of champagne. It took him no time at all to spot Camilla. She was stationed at the front, wearing the emerald dress that was quite literally the catalyst of his presence. She stood poised as people approached her with questions, her expression earnest yet composed, revealing the passion she had for the cause. For a few moments, Henry simply watched her interact with donors. She exuded warmth, compassion, and a slight edge of impatience for anyone who wasn't truly committed. When her gaze finally landed on him, the brief flash of surprise on her face was impossible to miss. He could almost hear her unspoken question. "What are you doing here?" Henry offered the barest hint of a smile, then waited. If she wanted him gone, he'd leave. If she wanted to hear him out, he'd talk. He was strangely unprepared for how drastically she might alter his perspective, but part of him was eager to find out. Camilla excused herself from a small group of donors, the polite hostess smile fading into something more guarded. She approached Henry, the glow of the ballroom's golden lights dancing against the emerald fabric of her gown. "I'm surprised to see you," she said, her voice neutral. "Did you come for the auction?" Henry glanced around at the lavish display of items up for bid. Luxury vacations, designer handbags, private tasting tours at exclusive vineyards. He shrugged, feeling uncharacteristically uncertain. "I came to see if this is really just about writing checks." For a moment, her expression softened. Then duty pulled her back into the swirl of the event. "Stay if you like," she told him, stepping toward the podium to announce the next set of auction items. "But don't feel obligated." Henry watched her walk away. His business instincts told him to leave now. He had nothing to gain professionally from hovering around an auction, yet something else stirred in him, an unfamiliar desire to understand exactly why Camilla cared so deeply about this foundation. A hush fell over the crowd when she took the stage, speaking passionately about how the funds raised would provide after-school programs, scholarship opportunities, and housing assistance for struggling families. She painted a vivid image of a community that supported its most vulnerable members, one where children could dare to believe in bigger dreams. He observed the room's reaction. There was genuine respect for Camilla, and it was clear she wasn't just a figurehead. She was a driving force behind every success story the foundation had. The applause that followed was warm and sincere, and Henry found himself clapping along, truly clapping for the first time at such an event. When the bidding resumed, Henry made his way closer to the stage. His heart thudded strangely at the idea that he might do something impulsive. Moments later, an extravagant weekend getaway package to a Greek island was introduced as the next auction lot. Hands shot up around the room. Henry hesitated only briefly before raising his paddle. He wasn't entirely sure why he was bidding, perhaps to show solidarity, or perhaps to test the waters of genuine involvement. The numbers climbed higher, people turning to see who was driving the bid up. In the end, Henry offered a final amount that made a whisper run through the audience. The gavel struck, and the package was his. From her vantage point, Camilla looked on with a mixture of caution and interest. Maybe tonight, she thought, Henry Stone would reveal whether he was more than just another faceless check writer. Once the final auction item was sold, an air of celebration took over the ballroom. Several donors migrated to the adjoining lounge for drinks and casual conversation. Henry managed to catch Camilla near the silent auction tables as she tallied final bids with volunteers. He could sense her curiosity, though she tried to maintain a professional demeanor. "So," she said, slipping a pen into her clutch, "are you going to call your assistant tomorrow and regret spending so much on a vacation package you may never use?" Henry smirked. "I might just surprise you and actually take the trip, though I'd need someone to enjoy it with." He hadn't meant to sound so forward, but the look of mild shock in her eyes prompted him to clarify. "No pressure, of course. I'm just saying it'd be a shame if the cabin goes empty." Machuram. Camilla's stiff posture relaxed a fraction. "I'm more concerned about how you've written checks to the foundation for years without ever setting foot inside our community centers." She paused, searching his face. "You did know that you were on our donor list, right?" "I sign off on a lot of philanthropic ventures," Henry replied. "Until now, I guess I never thought too deeply about where it all led. But you've shown me that there's more behind the numbers, real people, real outcomes." She studied him for a moment, then made a quick gesture, indicating he should follow her. They navigated through the crowded hallway and found a quieter corner near the balcony. Cool night air drifted in, a welcome contrast to the ballroom's warmth. Camilla leaned against the railing, her emerald gown catching the moonlight, making her look both regal and approachable at the same time. "Is this a whim?" she asked softly. "Showing up here tonight, outbidding everyone else, talking about involvement? Are you just curious, or is there something else?" Henry took a step closer, close enough to catch a faint hint of her floral perfume. "I'm not the kind of man who does things on a whim. I'm deliberate. And right now I'm choosing to be here because I want to learn more about what drives you. And maybe," he hesitated, meeting her gaze, "maybe I want to see if I can be part of it, not just on the sidelines." For the first time, Camilla's guarded expression softened into something like hope. "If you mean that," she said quietly, "then come by the community center next week. See it for yourself." Henry nodded, feeling a strange flutter of anticipation. "I'll be there," he promised. True to his word, Henry arrived at the main community center the following Monday afternoon. The building itself showed modest signs of wear, faded bricks, a barely visible sign, but inside he was greeted by an explosion of color and warmth. Murals painted by local kids adorned the hallways. A chorus of chatter and laughter echoed from multiple rooms, each dedicated to a different community program. He found Camilla by a set of shelves stacked with donated books. She was in jeans and sneakers this time, a far cry from the elegant gown she'd worn before. Yet there was no mistaking her presence, that undercurrent of determination that seemed to shape every step she took. "I'm impressed," she said, offering a polite smile. Not many donors bothered to visit on such short notice. Henry followed her down a corridor where a youth tutoring session was in progress. Children clustered around volunteer mentors, working through homework and reading exercises. The volunteers shot Camilla looks of grateful recognition, as though she were a linchpin in their daily success. "I wanted to see what the foundation does firsthand," Henry said. Camilla nodded toward a door labeled Career Counseling. Inside, a handful of adults huddled around a table, listening to a volunteer coach them on resume building and interview tips. "This is where our donors' money goes," Camilla explained. "We help at-risk families, single parents, anyone who needs an extra hand. Some just need a supportive push to get back on their feet." A pang of humility coursed through Henry. He was used to seeing numbers on spreadsheets, not flesh and blood individuals working to improve their lives. "You built all this," he observed, more a statement than a question. "With a lot of help," Camilla corrected, stopping by a bulletin board filled with success stories and thank you notes. "But yes, in a way, I've been here since day one. The foundation's growth feels personal. I've slept on that couch in the break room more times than I can count." Henry turned to face her. "You're quite something." Camilla shrugged, but a hint of color tinted her cheeks. "Passion can move mountains when you let it, but it's not easy. You have no idea how many grants we've had to fight for, how many times we nearly shut down." Henry looked around, newly aware that behind every success story stood an army of challenges. "I'd like to help beyond just writing checks," he said gently, "if you'll let me." Over the weeks that followed, Henry's presence at the community center became less of a novelty and more of a fixture. He'd show up unannounced in the late afternoon, sometimes bringing fresh snacks for the kids or donating small luxuries like art supplies. He kept it low-key, never flaunting his wealth, which earned a nod of approval from Camilla. She was cautious, though, maintaining a professional boundary even as Henry's involvement became increasingly genuine. Their conversations grew deeper whenever they found a quiet moment between the hustle of tutoring sessions and resource distribution. Henry would ask about the kids, about the hardships families faced, and about the dreams Camilla had for expanding the foundation's reach. She, in turn, began asking him questions that had nothing to do with money, like where he'd grown up, what inspired him outside of work, and whether there was more to Henry Stone than the sleek penthouse and corporate empire. One afternoon, while a group of teenagers worked on a volunteer-organized art project, Camilla approached Henry with a thoughtful expression. "You know," she said, her voice low to avoid interrupting the kids, "I never intended to rely on someone like you. I've been independent for so long, it's practically second nature." Henry set down a box of paintbrushes, meeting her gaze. "I'm not here to eclipse anything you've accomplished," he said. "Honestly, I'm just drawn to what you're doing. The results are real, and you—" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "You make me believe in something other than profit margins for once." Camilla's lips quirked into a small smile. "This place always needed someone with resources and a real heart behind them. If that's you, I'm learning to accept it." Shortly after, a ripple of commotion rose from the front hall. A mother, tears glistening on her cheeks, was expressing gratitude to one of the career counselors. She'd just landed a full-time job, which meant she could finally move her family into a better housing situation. Camilla beamed at the news, her entire face lighting up as she rushed to congratulate the woman. Henry witnessed it like an epiphany. This wasn't just charity, it was transformation. And Camilla was the steadfast pillar making it all possible. That evening, as he walked Camilla out to her car, the last rays of sunlight dipped behind tall skyscrapers. "Thank you," he murmured, surprising even himself with the sincerity behind the words. "For letting me see this." She simply nodded, her guarded eyes revealing a flicker of warmth. Though their connection grew, a new tension simmered beneath the surface. Camilla wasn't the type to let down her guard easily, and Henry sensed a continual wariness in her, a fear that this was all too good to be true. On a chilly Wednesday, she finally gave voice to her worries after the community center had closed. They were strolling along a quiet city block, hands shoved into coat pockets to ward off the cold. "I've seen too many fair-weather donors, Henry," she confessed. "People who swoop in, get the feel-good moment, and then vanish when real commitment is needed." He stopped in his tracks, turning to face her. "I'm not that person." Camilla inhaled slowly, as though bracing herself. "I'm starting to believe that," she admitted, "but it's hard for me to let anyone in, let alone someone with your kind of influence. I've worked so hard to stand on my own. Depending on another person feels risky." Henry gently touched her arm. The vulnerability behind her words resonated with him, stirring a protectiveness he was unaccustomed to feeling. "Maybe part of real strength," he offered, "is knowing when to let someone stand beside you." They resumed walking, a hush falling between them. The city lights glimmered off the wet pavement, each passing car adding a flicker of brightness to the dark street. Eventually, they came upon a small bistro still open at that late hour. Its warm interior beckoned, so they ducked inside, the scent of simmering tomato sauce and fresh bread greeting them. They slipped into a cozy booth, steam rising from cups of hot tea placed before them. Over that impromptu meal, Camilla revealed more of her backstory, how she'd grown up in a tight-knit household that fell apart after her father lost his job. She described the eviction, the shame her family felt, and the menial jobs she juggled in college to stay afloat. Henry listened, absorbing details that painted a picture of resilience. In turn, he shared the pressures of running Stone Enterprises, the constant tug-of-war between forging profitable ventures and appeasing stakeholders who had little concern for social impact. "I don't want to just be a machine that generates revenue," he confessed. "That used to thrill me, but now it feels hollow." Camilla studied him, the tension in her posture easing ever so slightly. "Let's see if we can keep each other balanced," she said quietly. And in the warmth of that bistro, an unspoken promise hung in the air, fragile but real. Still, life wasn't a fairy tale. As Henry tried to intertwine his world with Camilla's, obstacles arose. Stone Enterprises was neck-deep in negotiations for a major international merger, drawing Henry's attention away from the community center just when Camilla was ramping up a new fundraising campaign. Tempers flared in their brief phone calls. Their text messages became scattered, short on both time and warmth. Amid these pressures, a concerning rumor spread within Camilla's circles. A longtime benefactor was withdrawing support, citing internal conflicts at the foundation. Although Camilla tried to keep calm, the potential loss of those funds could derail several youth programs. She suspected the rumor might be sparked by unscrupulous business rivals of Henry's, or perhaps by donors who doubted her leadership. Regardless, she felt the weight of it deeply. One late evening, she confronted Henry in his skyscraper office, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city he dominated. "I need the truth," she said, crossing her arms. "There's talk that certain donors might be pulling out because of your involvement. People are saying the foundation is too reliant on big money from questionable sources." Henry bristled at the implication, though he kept his voice measured. "Questionable sources? Are they talking about me specifically?" Camilla nodded, worry etching lines into her brow. "You have competitors who'll do anything to tarnish your reputation. One rumor can scare smaller donors who can't afford to be associated with bad press." Henry sank into his leather chair, frustration mounting. "I've spent years building a name in business. I may not be a saint, but I'm not involved in anything illegal or unethical. This is sabotage by my rivals, plain and simple. They want to undermine my credibility, and now yours." Silence stretched between them, thick with unresolved tension. Camilla eventually sighed. "I believe you, but the damage is being done either way. I can't let the foundation suffer." Henry stood, rounding the desk until he was inches away from her. "Let me handle the corporate sabotage. You focus on what you do best, helping people. I'll ensure the foundation doesn't lose a dime. We can face this together." For once, Camilla didn't argue. Instead, she looked at him with a mixture of fear and resolve. "Together," she echoed. But neither of them knew exactly what that would entail, or how much they stood to lose if the rumors continued. In the days that followed, Henry unleashed the full might of his legal and PR teams, rooting out the source of the damaging rumor. Board members from Stone Enterprises circulated a transparent financial report, publicly confirming that Henry's funds were beyond reproach. Meanwhile, Camilla arranged a series of open house events at the community center, inviting local media and smaller donors to witness the foundation's accomplishments firsthand. When journalists saw the real work being done, single parents finding jobs, children receiving mentorship, public sentiment shifted quickly in their favor. The turnaround was swift and decisive. Not only did the foundation retain its existing donors, it also attracted new ones inspired by the adversity Camilla and Henry had overcome. In the midst of this victory, Henry couldn't shake the realization that Camilla's unwavering dedication had pushed him toward a level of honesty and open-heartedness he'd never before experienced. On a balmy evening soon after, he found himself in a quiet part of the city park. Fairy lights twinkled on nearby trees, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. Camilla had just wrapped up a long day of meetings, and Henry insisted they take a walk to celebrate how far they'd come. He paused beneath a tall oak, turning to face her. "You know," he said softly, "I've always measured success by numbers, Deals closed, profit margins hit. But lately, all I can think about is the sense of purpose I get when I'm with you. Camilla's eyes flickered with an emotion that was part wonder, part apprehension. Henry, he reached into his jacket pocket, heart pounding. I'm a man who chooses carefully. You know that. And I choose you, Camilla Hart, for a lifetime. Then he opened a small velvet box, revealing a ring that glinted softly in the park's subdued light. Her hand flew to her mouth, eyes brimming with disbelief and joy. For a long moment she couldn't speak, her thoughts racing through every challenge they'd faced together. Finally, tears shimmering, she whispered, "Yes, of course, yes." Their wedding months later was an intimate affair, held at a sunlit garden owned by the foundation. Children from the community center placed flowers along the aisle, volunteers and staff mingled with Henry's colleagues, and a gentle breeze carried the distant melody of a string quartet. When Camilla walked toward him in a simple, elegant gown, her eyes full of promise, Henry Stone understood the undeniable truth. A tiny oversight at a dry cleaner's had guided him toward the most profound commitment of his life. And in that moment, everything else fell into place, illuminating the best mistake he had ever made.